Hello, Dr. Miki. Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you
Okay.
for joining us.
I'm in the right session, right?
You are, yes, but we'll start in 12 minutes.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Dr. Kotemba.
Good morning, good afternoon. Hi, how are you?
How are you? Great to have you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering who is going to share the slides, share screen?
So the host is Natsai.
Yes,
Yes.
Dr. Natsai is, if you could reach out to her, could you please tell her? Because we'd like to run a quick test of the slides.
All right. And is my volume fine? Are you able to hear me clearly?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Just sending a message now.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so we can start now. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on day 2 of the Global Conference for Diaspora Networks in Science. We're very excited to have you with us now, and we're moving to a very special session focusing on diaspora networks in Africa. The session is titled Gender, Science, and Migration Discussion for Early Career Researchers. It is my honor to present to you the host of the session, Dr. Natsai Shiwai. She holds a PhD in chemical engineering, and she will be introducing her fellow panel. Dr. Natsai, please go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to our session today entitled Gender, Migration and Science for Early Career Researchers. Oftentimes, early career researchers such as postdocs are faced with migration as they seek to find employment soon after completing their studies, and especially to take up contract and short-time employment. And thus, for many of them, migration is inevitable. But migration does not only, if you have a family, migration is not only your sole decision, it is also the family involved that you have to move around with. Myself, I have lived in 3 countries in the past 15 years. I have stayed in 6 cities within that time. So migration is something that I've experienced together with the joys that comes with it, and together with the challenges as well. So today we are privileged to have researchers with us who have volunteered to share their experiences with us, with the goal to arm us with information as early career researchers who are faced with a decision, so that we are better prepared if we so wish to migrate to other regions. I have with me Dr. Putemba, Professor Sisu, and Dr. Miket, and Dr. Phyllis Makurunje, who will be sharing their stories with us with regards to migration, their experiences carrying out research in different parts of the world. To start with, I will invite these guests to share their backgrounds with us. To start with, I will introduce Dr. Makurunje, who is a Zimbabwe national, but is currently based at the Nuclear Futures Institute at Bangor University in the United Kingdom. Phyllis is currently the Executive Secretary on the Executive Council of the Space Generation Advisory Council, which supports UN space programs. She previously served on the President's Council of Student Advisors of the American Ceramic Society. Her PhD is in metallurgy, specifically ceramics. Dr. Phyllis, can you give us the background of your background and together with your current research interests?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Natsai. Thank you. It's also great to see other panelists here. As you have introduced already, I'm currently working at the Nuclear Futures Institute, which is based in Wales at Bangor University. This is in the United Kingdom. But before this, I was at Wits University in Johannesburg for a while. I started my postgraduate studies in 2013. And also in the process, I managed to get a gig in industry. So I was working while juggling my studies also. So I had moved to South Africa in 2013 from Zimbabwe, where I'd briefly interned just after graduating from the National University of Science and Technology, where I had studied chemical engineering. So that's the short of my journey so far. I've been in my present role for 2 years to the date, actually. It's exciting.
Thanks for that introduction. Just as a follow-up question, how did you land this role in the UK? Was it your goal as a PhD student that you want to go to Europe to do your postdoc, experience different culture, work in a different lab?
I didn't see this coming. I thought I was going to, I had ambitions of working in the US. And the reason for that is that the US is one of the biggest space sectors in the world. So that was the reason why I was looking at the US. But it's funny how I landed this role. I said, I think the US market is very competitive. I need to kind of practice a bit of my job search experience and kind of boost my confidence. So I bumped into this role in the UK and I just applied. I said, oh, well, I'm not going to the UK, so I have nothing to lose. I'm just applying. To my surprise, when I interviewed, I was the successful candidate. So I took the role excitedly because the COVID lockdowns had already started globally. So I felt I was fortunate to have gotten an opportunity when across the globe, most people were facing the challenge of being laid off or losing their jobs and all of that. So I took it from a point of gratitude, but it wasn't in my plans. But I'm happy that I got the opportunity. It was more than what I thought it was.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Quite interesting. I'll move on now to Dr. Mieke. Dr. Mieke was born in South Africa, and she's currently a feedstock technologist for Protex in the Netherlands. She worked in South Africa for the diamond industry before obtaining her PhD in bioresource engineering at Stellenbosch University. Mieke is raising a family, and she will share with us her experience of migration. Mieke, can you give us your background and how you ended up in the Netherlands? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my story with you all today. So as Dr. Natsai said, background in chemical engineering and bioresource engineering, and directly after my PhD, I was busy looking for a job. So I was based in Stellenbosch University. So I primarily used LinkedIn job platform to look out for jobs, and my filters were based on Cape Town area and the Netherlands. And I could not find anything in the region, and the postdocs available did not capture my interest as much. And then I found a job listing for the Netherlands that fitted almost exactly the work that I did during my PhD. So I thought this is a very good continuation of that. And I remember the evening telling my husband, I found this perfect job. This is what it's all about. And he said, wow, that's fantastic. Where is it based? And I said, the Netherlands. And he first thought I was making a joke. So he's like, no, really, where is it based? So like you mentioned in the introduction, migration is not, when you have a family, it's not a sole decision. So it took some time for my husband to get this, to wrap his mind around migrating or literally to the other half of the world from South Africa for this job opportunity. And then everything was set in motion, and my new boss said that he really wants my husband to also find a work in the Netherlands. So that was also something that we had to go through as a prerequisite for me to start working. But now we've been living here end of this year for 4 years. It's been a very positive experience. Of course, there is a lot of culture shock, but it's also good to get a new perspective. So now there's a lot of things about South Africa that I really appreciate that I took for granted previously. So I would say that was a big learning for me. And yes, moving was, you cannot account for how much you will miss your friends and family. But good advice before I came here that a friend gave is, do not look at the new country for everything that it is not. Look at it for everything that it is. So that was also good to have the right perspective on embracing a new journey. I don't know if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you for that introduction. Maybe elaborate why, after working for the private sector, you decided to take up PhD studies. Did you ever feel like it would enable you to migrate, maybe go to Europe or the global north?
Yes, that's a good question. After I finished my chemical engineering undergraduate, I was not sure at all which direction I want to go in, because as most of you can also also see it, that you have so many options. You can go into wastewater treatment, pharmaceutical, petrochemical. So I found a job for the diamond industry, and it was very interesting. It gave me the opportunity to visit different places like Lesotho and Botswana, which was really nice. But I remember the one day we were driving in Lesotho, and I saw a big wall, I thought that they were building a dam. And when we got to the top, it was just where they filled up the valley with rock to build a new production facility. And although I agree the mining industry is very good for job creation and for stimulating the economy, I just felt that this is not a very sustainable thing to do to fill up this valley. And I don't know if the town downstream has any water left. So I thought, it started my thoughts on something, what can I do that is a bit more sustainable? And that led me to pursue my PhD in the bioresource engineering. But then I had to make the decision going from master's to PhD, do I want to do this? Because within South Africa, if you pursue a PhD, you will mostly end up in academia. The chances of going back to industry is very slim. But that is the nice thing about working in the Netherlands, is that here if you have a PhD, you are not limited to academia, because companies are so innovative and it's quite a rich country. So the government has a lot of money available for projects and research work and new startups. These companies can afford to hire people with that's very highly skilled. So that's also an advantage for. So yes, to answer your question, when I decided to do a PhD, it was not necessarily with the idea to go abroad, but I definitely knew that it would open more chances for me to do so. So that was when you make your pros and cons list. It was definitely in the pros column that it could give you the opportunity to go abroad if there would be an opportunity. Yes.
Oh, thank you for sharing that experience. You've indeed traveled to a number of African countries in Southern Africa. So you have a better perspective and you can share with us in depth the differences between the Netherlands, where you are in Europe and Africa. I will move on now to request Dr. Kutemba to share her background. Firstly, I would introduce here Dr. Kutemba Kapanji was born in Zambia and currently resides in Ethiopia. Kutemba is a researcher in the Water, Energy and Environment Program at the National Institute for Scientific and Industrial Research in Zambia. She holds a PhD in chemical engineering from Stellenbosch University, South Africa. As she says herself, she currently lives in 2 cities, Lusaka and Addis. Let's hear her explain more on how that is possible to live in 2 cities at the same time. Kutemba, share your background with us, please.
Thank you, Dr. Chwai, for this opportunity, and hi to everyone. So thank you. I'll just give a brief background of my science journey and how that I am currently seated in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. So I am a chemical engineer by profession and did my first degree in the United Kingdom, Birmingham. And from there, I went back to Zambia to work in the mining industry. And in fact, during those days, it was not very straightforward for one to get a job straight after their studies, a foreigner to get a job straight after their studies. But I've noticed over the years, there's visas that have come in for first degree graduates to, I think, work in the UK for a year and just get grounded. So I worked in the mining industry in Zambia, and I was a single person. And afterwards, went on to further my studies at the University of the Witwatersrand in South Africa, and did research in industrial wastewater treatment. And thereafter, so went back to Zambia. And so after going back into the mines, I got married, and so did a kind of mini migration from one town to another to join my husband in a different town. And so from then on, joined a research institute, a national research institute. And that's where I've been working as a researcher, mostly in the environment and energy sector. So I then went on and pursued my PhD studies at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. And by this time, as you might be aware, there was family involved. And so for a year, I went there with the children, 2 children, and had them for a year, but struggled, I think, in terms of how to balance, having kids there and also my studies. So I had them in creche, but would always have to pick them up around 4 p.m. And so it was a bit hectic, and so sent them back home. So after finishing my PhD studies, I went back home, went back to my research institute. But then during that time, my husband then got a job in Ethiopia. And that's how come I've ended up here. I've had to arrange for a kind of leave of absence from my workplace and have joined him here in Addis Ababa. And so I work remotely for my company, my research institute back home. And when I'm in Zambia, I actually physically turn up for work. But it has also been interesting that even while sitting here in Addis, I've had opportunities to attend networking sessions and conferences for early career researchers, and have done quite some interesting collaborations with, in fact, two groups. And so we've actually managed to do some publications. And so that has been an interesting route for me as well, whilst being away from my base and my current job. And so that collaboration has really helped me, carry on with my research interests. And also another opportunity I've found whilst being here is, I think because of COVID, there's been a lot of short-term jobs at home-based that have been coming up. And so those have really been helpful as well in just helping me just engage myself in my research interests. So COVID in a way has brought out other opportunities for me whilst working remotely and living in Addis Ababa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kutemba. You've taken the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask you, you can expand on what is your view? Do you feel that COVID has made people more receptive to these online platforms in terms of meetings and conferences? Because previously some of the tools have been available, but people still preferred physical meetings and shunned online meetings. Also, in your current role, do you think maybe COVID has opened that opportunity for you, whereas you'd mostly needed to be physically at the office?
Thank you very much, Dr. Chwai. So I'll start with the second one. I think COVID has opened up opportunities in the sense that, yes, I'm not just here on a spousal visa, which limits, in fact, your work opportunities. And so I'm able to engage on a certain level, up to a certain level in terms of, I think, paper-based research. Although at times with the current collaborations we've been doing, we've actually done a field study. So when I was in Zambia, I actually went into the field. But with the nature of my work, I think it also limits me in the sense that I do need a lab in which to run certain studies. And so in a way, yes, opportunities have opened up to do a kind of home-based desktop study, but also there's that limit in terms of you actually being in a physical lab to do some research that might require that kind of attention. And in terms of the receptiveness on whether people are now accepting, you working remotely away from home and delivering, I think it has opened up, yes, it has opened up that possibility. And in both, in fact, private and public sector, you find that meetings are now being held online. And I think as long as one is able to deliver, that too has become more useful. And I think it's also good that it exposes early research careers in terms of how to use ICT and just spread their research work, and also have a larger audience in which to share such work findings in. So it has, I think, has been accepted well, and I hope it's something that will be sustainable and be used going forward. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that is my hope as well, and wish that many of us will not go back to preferring physical meetings. Maybe there are reasons for preferring physical meetings to online meetings, and remote work to on-site work. I'll move on now to Associate Professor Sisu Kingondu, who is here with us to share his migration story. Associate Professor Sisu Kingondu is a Kenyan national who currently resides in Botswana in Southern Africa. Sisu holds a BSc degree in industrial chemistry from the University of Nairobi and a PhD degree in chemistry from the University of Connecticut. Sisu's research focuses on nanomaterials and their application in energy storage and catalysis. SISU has managed to acquire funding grants to a total of over $6 million, which is a huge success on his part. But it's not only that, SISU has also had his own fair share of migration over the years, and he's going to share that with us in detail. Over to you, Professor Sesto.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natsai and everyone. And thanks for having me. I'm Cecil, or Cecil. That's how Americans used to pronounce it, Cecil. So I'm currently in Botswana, working as an associate professor of chemistry. But I want to take you back to where I started in Nairobi, Kenya. So I'm a Kenyan. I went to, I did my first degree at the University of Nairobi, graduated at the top of the class. But despite that, I had no ambitions of going outside. So I really wanted to work in Kenya and stay very close to my parents. So I got a job with the government. And the job was about doing environmental monitoring on all the farm produce leaving for the Europe. That is the vegetables and the fish and everything. So it was a lot of it. It involved a lot of analysis in the lab and being on the bench for a very long time. So I was very excited to start on that job because I got it like 2 months after graduation. So, and the money, the salary there, because it was the first job, I thought it's a lot. So I got started working, but in the second month, I kind of felt that is not my what I want to do, especially that's not what I want to be doing by the time I get to 50s or 40s, just being on the bench. It was very tiring. So that's the time I started now thinking about how I can move away from the bench and the opportunities that I had. And knowing the situation, the job market in Africa, the only way I could have moved from the bench was to upgrade myself, like go for masters, go for PhD and stuff like that. And I also wanted freedom because that job meant that I spent almost the whole day in the lab with a little traveling and stuff like that. So I started looking for opportunities. Scholarship opportunities. I got an opportunity. I got a scholarship to study at the University of Nairobi, but the scholarship was very little. It was about $100 just to support, to pay your rent, to pay your everything. So I expanded my search to the rest of the world. I looked for scholarship in the US, and then I managed to get actually 4. And I decided to pick the one at the University of Connecticut, but it was one, it was the stipend was a little bit more than the rest. And secondly, one of my professors at the University of Nairobi actually studied there, and they encouraged me to go there. So 2007, it was very painful to leave my parents. It was my first time to see my mom cry at the airport. And that didn't go down very well with me. But I had to go. I left for the US. So I arrived there in summer. So the weather was not very bad, but very soon the winter started. But I was very homesick. Every time I would talk to my mom, and well, it was tough the first week, the first 1 year. And I remember at one point telling my mom that I want to go back, but she got sick in 2008. And then within a very short time, it became so serious and she passed away. So after that, I had to now grieve, and as I also get used to the new environment, culture shock, But after she passed away, that's when I said, now I have to stay in grad school, because that's she was one of the main reason why I really wanted to go back and stay close. But now she was no more. I had to now focus on my life. So I spent 5 years at the University of Connecticut. Very exciting time, and I look at that as one of my the best time in my life. I got to interact with so many people from China, from Iran, from India, from the rest of the world, Caribbean, Latin America, because my group, my supervisor, had a very big group, 36 students, PhD students, and it diverse group in terms of the country representation. So, and he was also very active in research. So I got to work on different projects, industry and research. Then from there, I decided now, after my graduating, I really wanted to do research in a national lab, because I felt that's where I can do like cutting edge research. That was beyond what my boss was doing. So I tried to join national lab, Los Alamos, Brookhaven, and I got a letter, or they informed me that I needed, because I'm not a citizen, or I didn't have a permanent residence, I needed a clearance. But time was going. So I decided now to look for equivalent opportunities beyond US. So I tried Canada and I tried Australia. So the Canada one came out within a very short time, and they didn't, they had no requirement for me to go through clearance and stuff like that. So I managed to get a postdoc at the National Institute for Nanotechnology at Edmonton. So I moved there. But during my stay in US for 5 years, I met a very beautiful lady who is currently my wife. And we had not like stayed together. So again, moving to Canada was very difficult, because we had to discuss. It probably took 2 months to agree that I should go and leave her there to finish her PhD. So I moved to Canada. Very cold place, East Edmonton, west part of that country. Before moving from US, I actually thought I had gotten used to winter, but I didn't know that winter in West Canada was something else. So in January, I had to deal with the negative 20 degrees, but people there, they kind of helped me survive. Very nice people. So got started working as a postdoc. But as we all know that after your first year, postdoc becomes like a routine. So so that's when I was like, I need to start looking for a job. And I really wanted to go back and give at some point, and thinking about my journey. And during the time I was in the US and I was in Canada, I would visit my home university, and I would see the kind of live education experience students there that are going through. And I really wanted to give back. So I felt like, instead of taking a job in the north, let me go back to my country to give back, transfer the skills and knowledge I had to my young sisters and brothers. So I started looking for a job. I couldn't get job in my country, unfortunate, but I got job in Tanzania. So I moved to Tanzania, very close to the Kenyan border, that is in Arusha. So it was very easy for me to cross. So I worked there for 3 years, and again, it was very good, because I got my first grant. When was it? I joined in 2013, and 2013 September. So 2014 early, that's when I got the news. I applied for the grant in October. So around January, I got the grant, and that's how I started my research career. Supported very many students, bought in equipments, which I ended up to live there. But again, after some point, because I was very ambitious in terms of research, I kind of started feeling like I needed to grow faster than I was growing professionally. So I looked for a job in my country, Kenya. Then I moved to Kenya. Within a very short time, I was promoted from lecturer to senior lecturer. Then continued doing and like teaching and doing research. But we all know that growth sometimes can be very difficult when you stay in the same institution in African setting. So I decided to apply, to start looking again for job, places you can grow, places you can, especially in research, places you can attract grants and procure, like set up a full lab. So that's how I landed into Botswana. So Tanzania, I just looked online, got a job, but I had to, before committing myself, I had to travel to Tanzania to kind of visit the institution and get to know the institution I'm joining. So for the one in Botswana, it was again online. No, like I just wanted to, I went to the internet, started looking, and then I found a position. I applied, I did interview online, then I was taken. So that's how I found myself in Botswana. And again, after getting here, I joined 2017, and toward the end of 2018, I applied for Royal Society grant, and I managed to get it. So all the institutions I've visited, I've worked, I've left equipment, I've trained students, and that's one thing I'm very proud of. And I'm very happy for this kind of opportunity, because I've always used conferences and platforms like this one to make contacts. Contacts I've used in applying for grants and supervising students, and even being in this forum is because of a contact I made with Dr. Natsai when we were in Ghana, and Dr. Gutemba. Thank you for having me. I think I'm done.
Thank you, Professor Cecil, for being open and honest, and giving us a detailed account of your journey so far. As a follow-up question, maybe can you expand on migration challenges that may be there in terms of visa applications and limitations in other places, since we early career and mostly researchers, we have contract work. So, and considering you've had a lot of movement in the past, how do you think that has affected other areas of your life, maybe in terms of development or other maybe assets that you'd want to do, maybe your financial life or economic reasons?
That's a very good question.
Just feel free to refrain from what you cannot share. However you tackle the question, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's a very good question. Yeah. We all know that migrating has got its own, has got very many challenges, cultural shock, and getting used to new food and stuff like that. So my moving to Canada, let me pick that one. That's the one where I had challenges in getting a visa. And it was about, the challenges were just about delays. I delayed for quite long, that my host was almost now re-advertising my position. But I got the visa after I think 6 months, then I moved there. So the biggest challenge with this migration I've had, I think it's about my family. I have not been able, I'm now very old. But I got my firstborn this year, July 4th. So you can see the impact of migration. So every time I moved, we used to postpone starting family. And that is not very good sometimes. And when I was moving to, initially we were to now start our family, get married and start our family in the US. But when the Canada opportunity came, we had to pause that. And then I went to Canada. Then we continued visiting each other. Then after that, I moved. Now we agreed that we both wanted to go back to Kenya. My wife is from Kenya. So there was no point of, when we agreed that we all want to go back to Kenya. So she didn't move to Canada. I didn't go back to the US, despite the fact that I had a permanent residence. The NY, it's called National Interest Waiver. So we moved. When I moved to moving to Tanzania was actually kind of going to start preparing the grounds, because Tanzania, Arusha is very close to Nairobi. So my preparing grounds in the sense that like building, like preparing, like getting ready so that as she finishes like finalizing a PhD studies to move to Kenya so that we can start a family. So, but that didn't took long, because studies didn't like, there were some challenges with our finishing, so it took longer than we expected. So, but eventually she moved. She now moved to Kenya in 2017, and that's the time we finished building our first house, then ready to settle. Again, you can see the delays in starting the family. From US, we delayed that. In Canada, there's no way, because I didn't know how long I will stay in Canada. So 2017, we started staying together for a very short time. So then I have to move to Botswana. Again, we had to pause that, because we didn't want to be staying separately when we are raising our kid. So I moved to Botswana in 2017. She had to move to follow me in 2018. And that's when we started our journey in terms of like getting our family. The rest, because of
Thank you.
starting to look for a kid when your age is advanced. Of course, that we know there are challenges, so we had to go through medical stuff. And yeah, we were blessed with our kid this year, July. So that was I can say that is the biggest challenge in my life, in terms of like the biggest challenge to do with the occasion by migration. That the biggest challenge in terms of migration to like someone starting a life. But in terms of like our personal growth in terms of finances and the career growth, that one I can't regret. Moving really helped me. That's what I can say.
Thank you, Professor Sisu. You have explored what we call the family career nexus in detail. There has to be a trade-off. It appears that some gains in one area will maybe limit other areas. But thank you for sharing your story. I think yours is unique to a few of us, in that you are a family of researchers and academics. So that compounds the challenges in magnitudes, in several orders of magnitude, if I can say. But I will move on now to ask the panelists. I will start with Mika this time. What would you say are the differences in terms of how scientists conduct themselves in, say, Netherlands, in Europe, where you are, and in South Africa, which is your past experience? In terms of support, what do you think how does it look like? Is it better in South Africa? What are the working conditions, the work hours, academia and academics work long hours, though they seem to be flexible, but they do work long hours, I think longer than most. So share with us on your view or position on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So the first part, how do scientists conduct themselves? In South Africa, when you have a PhD, almost everybody addresses you as doctor. So it's a very formal notice, where in the Netherlands, you rarely go by your title. So there's that difference in that. But again, in Germany, it becomes very important. So often some of my colleagues have told me when they work within the Netherlands, they would sometimes not even put doctor in their email signature. But when they send an email to the Germany, it becomes very important. And then again, they put it in. So that was something small that I noticed. That was quite interesting. In South Africa, even you get the title on your bank card or something like that. So I think it's seen as much more of an achievement in South Africa than in the Netherlands per se. But in terms of support, there is much more support in the Netherlands. When you do a PhD in the Netherlands, it's seen as a paid position. So you get paid to do it. So it's not seen as a study exercise as much as it is you are becoming a junior researcher. So I would say in that regards, where in South Africa I had to apply for a bursary, and I had to have support from my husband to support me with additional finances when I completed my PhD. So also for support, in terms of family in the Netherlands, most of the universities have daycare centers. So and it's then free for you to use if you are working at that university. Myself, I work now in the private sector, and the company, it's still company dependent. I've moved from one company to the one that I'm working now. And my first company was much smaller, and the average age of the people working there were much higher. So there were not such a focus on new families. So I did not feel so supported, but luckily I have the option of choice, especially now after COVID. There are not enough engineers in the Netherlands. So companies are recruiting quite aggressively and wanting to growing their teams. So I could move to a company where there is a focus on young families, and now I feel much more supported. And most of my colleagues make use of parental leave. So what that means is until your child is 7 years old, you have a certain amount of hours that you can take unpaid leave. And only in extreme circumstances, your employer can say no. And that's called a mom day or mama dag or papa dag. So now between my husband and I, each Wednesday, each one of us stays at home with my daughter. So we both have now a 36 work week. And also when I was pregnant with my daughter, people would ask me, so how many hours are you going to work after your daughter is here? And I thought that's such a strange question, because in South Africa, it's quite normal. You continue with your 40 hours work week. And here when I replied, no, 40 hours, they said, whoa, that is a lot. So it's also more in the culture that women would go to a 3-day work week when they start a family. But for me, and my husband, it worked well that we have alternating 4-day work weeks. So then to your last part of the question, the working hours and the working conditions. In the Netherlands specifically, there's a much bigger balance that I experience on a work-life balance. Also depending on the company that you work at, but they have a feeling that at 5 o'clock, you should sign off and focus on your family or your personal life. But when there's a big project coming up, and we need all hands on deck, then of course you are expected to work after hours or sometimes work over weekends. But usually your private time is quite respected, and it's not seen as a good thing necessarily if you have to work more. If you have to work overtime, it's most often seen that you are not efficient in getting your work done in time, or that you have too much work and you are not communicating it, rather than seeing you as a dedicated or a loyal employee. And that also comes through in when you are sick. And in South Africa, sometimes when you get sick, you need to go to the doctor and get a note from the doctor to show that you really are sick. And usually the doctor then tells you, okay, you need to stay in bed for 3 days. And then that you submit to your employer as proof that you really are sick and you need to stay in bed for 3 days. But in the Netherlands, when I arrived, I asked, okay, if I get sick, do you need a doctor's note? And they were like, why? If you're sick, you're sick. So that's also quite interesting. There's that quite that level of trust. Like if you say something is like that, then yeah, there's no reason to doubt that. Then of course you are sick and you must stay home and get better. So that was also quite interesting. But I must say, on the other hand, in the Netherlands, there is not a big difference. So there's no, I can almost say there's no career ladder really that you can climb. Somebody that has 10 years experience and somebody has 2 years experience, the salaries are very close to each other. So there's not a lot of poverty in the country, but also there are not a lot of rich people. But there's almost everybody is middle class. And so everybody has a good standard of living. But if you really want to climb a corporate ladder or really succeed in terms of financial gains, then it's the way to do it through your career is not the way to go. But then again, the advantage is that everybody has a good standard of living. So the young people they don't need to pursue a doctorate or a master's to get a good work, to have a living. A good standard of living. They can be basically anything they want because all the jobs sort of pay equally well. So I found that also to be very interesting. Where in South Africa, I always had the feeling that you really need to do your best. You really need to fulfill your full potential and study. You need to be a doctor or have a master's and able to get a good job or a good research position to have a good standard of living. So that's from my experience, the differences in that.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Mike. Quite interesting differences there. Sometimes in one area, there seem to be benefits, better experience in Africa, and in some aspects, it's better to be, I suppose, a mom in the Netherlands. And I will move on because of time. I'll ask that you respond, Professor Sisu, you respond to some of the questions in the chat. I want now to ask Dr. Phyllis to quickly share with us her experience of working in her field of space generation as a female. Have you had any challenges? I'm assuming you are a minority there, considering the statistics linked to girls in STEM. So briefly share with us your experience, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have really enjoyed being in this sector. I must say, where I work, there is a lot of support. And for me, I've seen the difference of having superiors who really believe in you, who really support you. And for that, I've been appreciative. I've been in a position where the superiors or your immediate boss maybe sometimes doubts your capability. So it really makes a difference. You have more impact when you are trusted, and I have had the privilege here in the UK. However, when in some, I'll just say maybe before I even moved to the UK, in some places when I was in industry, people wouldn't expect to see somebody like you, a young person. I remember at one point I had a meeting with some international delegates. They were coming from Europe. They sadly refused to have a meeting with me. I was the technical representative or consultant for my company in a way. So I would influence the supply chain decisions. So they felt that I was too young to know what I was doing, and they felt it had costed them much to be in that meeting. There was a disparity. But later in the meeting, they then realized that the company I was representing was quite a big company, international company. They wouldn't send somebody for serious business who didn't know what they were doing. So in the UK, can I just also maybe quickly mention other things? I really like what Dr. Mikai mentioned, 40-hour week. I last saw that many years ago. It's a new term to me that there are 40-hour weeks. In academia, I don't know, it's unlimited. You work until the outputs are there and are visible, are seen. And so really, I really envy industry for that. But being in such a in a place where you combine space and nuclear, you kind of have a double something on your plate, because both areas are high security areas. So it's a bit difficult to break some barriers, especially in industry sometimes, because you're limited. You will need security clearance to be able to handle matters which are usually of national interest, even if it's private industry. So that gets interesting. But I'll just mention that the cost of living, I found it quite expensive in the UK, so much that the returns or the gains, sometimes they don't balance as much as you would, versus maybe if you were in Africa, your money means a lot. You can do a lot. In the UK, you can only do so much. It looks lovely on paper, but the expenses are also very huge. So that's been my experience. That indeed, even in developed countries, sometimes the gender difference is a little bit there, even in technical areas. So yeah, sometimes you really have to prove yourself to be accepted in certain areas, and also to really show maybe your achievements in those areas. And also
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Phyllis. Because of time, I want to give Dr. Kutemba a chance to also say her view. Dr. Kutemba, would you, in your experience, would you consider going back to your homeland personally, permanently, and for what reasons would that be? In brief, in 30 seconds also.
Thank you once again.
As we wrap up the program.
Okay. I think at the stage I'm in, going back home gives me a sense of belonging, but also I have the desire to develop Africa and, raise the standards that Cecil has said, you try to give back to where you come from. So I am more than happy to go back, and I wish that will happen very soon. Thanks.
Thank you to Dr. Kutemba for that closing notes. And many thanks to my guests, Dr. Mike, Professor Sisu, Dr. Phyllis, and Dr. Kutemba for this session. I would like to thank you also for affording us the privilege to hear your firsthand personal experiences. Thank you for being open, and for sharing details of your lives with us, details about your family life with us today. Shedding light into what early career researchers go through and what early career research means. Many thanks also to Dr. Mike for her insights concerning working as an academic, a PhD holder in industry, in the private sector. So we have seen how migration affects family and the differences between how science is conducted in the north compared to the south, and also the south to south migration that is happening on the African continent. And with that, guests and attendees, I would like to thank you for attending our session entitled Gender Migration Science for Early Career Researchers. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Mike, Professor Cecil, Dr. Kutemba, and Dr. Phyllis, and Dr. Natsai. To our attendees, we have a new session starting up. Please join us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one.
Bye.